The morning mist clung to the concrete walls of the Federal Tactical Training Academy like a shroud, and Sarah Chun knew it would be her last sunrise here. She stood at her dormitory window, watching the other cadets file toward the mess hall. Their confident strides a stark contrast to the uncertainty that had been eating at her for weeks. In 3 hours, she would face the final evaluation that would determine whether she had what it took to become a federal agent, or whether she would join the growing list of washouts who couldn't handle the pressure. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you. Make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 26, Sarah had already defied expectations by making it this far. The daughter of a seamstress and a mechanic from a small town in Oregon, she had never fired a gun before arriving at the academy 6 months ago. While her classmates boasted about hunting trips with their fathers or military backgrounds that prepared them for this moment, Sarah's only experience with precision had come from threading needles and calibrating delicate sewing machines in her mother's alterations shop. The academy buzzed with its familiar morning rhythm as Sarah made her way to the cafeteria. Conversations died as she passed tables filled with her fellow cadets, their whispered comments following her like shadows. She had grown accustomed to being the outsider here, the quiet woman who didn't fit the typical mold of a federal agent candidate. Commander Patricia Reeves had made it clear from day one that the Federal Tactical Training Academy was not a place for the weak or uncertain. The 6-month program was designed to forge elite, law enforcement officers capable of handling the most dangerous situations the country could face. Every aspect of training was scrutinized, from physical fitness to psychological evaluations to weapons proficiency. Sarah had excelled in academics, her analytical mind absorbing criminal psychology and investigative procedures with ease. Her physical fitness scores were respectable, though not outstanding. But it was the firearms training that had become her greatest challenge and, paradoxically, her most fascinating subject. The Academy's firing range occupied an entire wing of the complex, featuring everything from basic pistol training to advanced sniper scenarios. Sarah's instructor, Sergeant Marcus Wade, was a 20-year veteran whose patience had been tested daily by her unconventional approach to marksmanship. While other cadets followed traditional shooting stances and breathing techniques, Sarah had developed her own methods, drawing on the fine motor control she had learned from years of intricate needlework. Her approach to shooting was methodical, almost meditative. Where others relied on muscle memory and aggressive positioning, Sarah treated each shot like a delicate procedure requiring absolute precision. She would study the target for long moments, calculating wind conditions and analyzing the subtle variations in her breathing pattern. Her movements were fluid, economical, as if she were adjusting the tension on a sewing machine rather than preparing to fire a weapon. The other cadets found her methods unusual, even amusing. Marcus Thompson, a former Marine who consistently scored among the top marksmen in their class, had made no secret of his skepticism about Sarah's techniques. During a recent training session, he had watched her carefully adjust her grip for the 3rd time before taking a shot and shook his head in disgust. "Chun, you're treating that pistol like it's made of glass," he had called out, loud enough for the entire firing line to hear. "This isn't arts and crafts class. You need to be decisive, aggressive. Hesitation gets people killed in the field." Sarah had ignored the comment, as she had learned to ignore most of the criticism that came her way. She understood that her methods appeared inefficient to observers, but she also knew that her unconventional approach was yielding results that surprised even her instructors. Her accuracy scores were consistently above average, though not spectacular enough to earn recognition or silence her critics. The real challenge came during high-pressure scenarios designed to simulate real-world conditions. The Academy's tactical training exercises were legendary for their intensity, combining physical stress with split-second decision-making and weapons deployment. It was during these exercises that the differences between Sarah and her classmates became most apparent. While other cadets thrived under pressure, their training taking over in automatic responses, Sarah struggled with the chaotic nature of the scenarios. Her methodical approach, so effective on the controlled firing range, seemed inadequate when faced with moving targets, multiple threats, and the adrenaline rush of simulated combat situations. Instructor Wade had pulled her aside after a particularly challenging exercise where she had failed to neutralize a threat in the required time frame. His expression was serious as he reviewed her performance scores in his office, the walls lined with commendations and photographs from his years in law enforcement. "Chun, your technical skills are solid," he had said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Your accuracy under controlled conditions is actually quite impressive. But field work isn't about controlled conditions. It's about adapting to chaos, making split-second decisions, and trusting your instincts." Sarah had nodded, understanding the criticism but feeling frustrated by her inability to translate her careful precision into the dynamic requirements of tactical operations. She knew that her approach worked for her, that the methodical techniques she had developed were rooted in genuine skill rather than hesitation or fear. But she also understood that the Academy's standards were not designed to accommodate unconventional methods. The weeks that followed brought increasingly difficult challenges as the program approached its conclusion. Advanced marksmanship tests, urban warfare simulations, and psychological evaluations designed to identify candidates who possessed the mental fortitude required for federal law enforcement. Sarah found herself falling behind in several areas. Her scores sufficient to pass individual tests, but not impressive enough to distinguish her as a top candidate. The whispers among her classmates grew more frequent and more pointed. Stories circulated about previous candidates who had been dismissed in the final weeks of training, sent home with polite letters explaining that they lacked the qualities necessary for federal service. Sarah began to notice subtle changes in how instructors interacted with her, a professional distance that suggested they were already writing her off as unlikely to graduate. It was during this period of growing uncertainty that Sarah discovered the Academy's Advanced Precision Shooting Laboratory. Located in a restricted section of the training facility, the lab was equipped with state-of-the-art technology designed to analyze and improve marksmanship skills. Access was typically limited to top-performing cadets and instructors, but Sarah had noticed that the facility was often empty during evening hours. Her first unauthorized visit to the lab revealed equipment that fascinated her analytical mind. Computerized shooting systems that could track bullet trajectories to the millimeter, environmental controls that could simulate various weather conditions, and diagnostic tools that provided detailed feedback on every aspect of shooting technique. The technology reminded her of the precision instruments in her mother's shop, devices that required careful calibration and understanding to produce perfect results. Sarah began spending her free time in the lab, initially just observing the equipment and reading the technical manuals. She discovered that the lab's computer systems contained detailed analyses of shooting techniques used by some of the world's most accomplished marksmen. She studied these records with the same intensity she had once applied to learning complex embroidery patterns, identifying subtle variations in technique that could produce dramatically different results. The unauthorized access to the lab became Sarah's secret project, a way to continue developing her skills without the pressure and criticism she faced during regular training sessions. She practiced with the computerized systems, experimenting with variations of her technique and studying the detailed feedback provided by the lab's sensors. The work was solitary and intense, often extending late into the night as she refined her understanding of precision shooting. It was during one of these late-night sessions that Sarah made a discovery that would change everything. While analyzing data from the lab's most advanced shooting system, she noticed patterns in the performance records that no one seemed to have identified. The computer tracked not just accuracy, but also factors like consistency, efficiency of movement, and physiological indicators of stress and control. According to the data, the most celebrated marksmen at the Academy achieved their results through a combination of natural talent and aggressive, confidence-based techniques. But Sarah's analysis revealed that there was another path to exceptional performance, one based on mathematical precision and absolute technical control. The lab's sensors showed that her unconventional methods actually produced superior results in several key areas, including consistency and accuracy under varying conditions. The revelation was both exciting and frustrating. Sarah realized that her approach to marksmanship was not inferior to traditional methods, it was simply different. The Academy's evaluation criteria favored explosive, decisive shooting styles that looked impressive and aligned with conventional military training. But the lab's objective measurements suggested that her methodical, precision-based approach could achieve results that surpassed even the most celebrated traditional marksmen. Armed with this knowledge, Sarah began to modify her training approach. She continued to use her unauthorized access to the lab to refine her techniques, but she also started to understand how to demonstrate her abilities in ways that would be recognized by her instructors. The challenge was not to abandon her natural approach, but to find ways to showcase its effectiveness within the Academy's existing framework. The breakthrough came during a routine marksmanship test that Sarah had been dreading. The exercise required cadets to engage multiple targets at varying distances under time pressure, exactly the type of scenario where her methodical approach typically struggled. But instead of trying to match the aggressive pace of her classmates, Sarah decided to trust her instincts and apply the lessons she had learned from her late-night lab sessions. Her performance that day was unlike anything she had achieved before. Moving with calm efficiency, she engaged each target with the same careful precision she brought to her individual practice sessions. But now, informed by her analysis of the lab data, she was able to maintain that precision while operating at a pace that met the exercise requirements. Her scores were not just acceptable, they were exceptional. Instructor Wade noticed the dramatic improvement immediately. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. After the exercise, he approached Sarah with an expression of surprise and curiosity that she had never seen from him before. His questions about her training methods were probing but respectful, suggesting genuine interest in understanding how she had achieved such a significant breakthrough. "Chun, what you did out there today was remarkable," he said, reviewing her target sheets with obvious admiration. "Your groupings were tighter than anyone else in the class, and your time was well within acceptable parameters. More importantly, you looked completely in control throughout the entire exercise. How did you make that adjustment?" Sarah felt a moment of panic, realizing that explaining her unauthorized use of the lab would likely result in immediate dismissal from the program. Instead, she focused on the technical aspects of her approach, describing how she had learned to trust her natural precision while adapting to the time requirements of tactical scenarios. Wade listened carefully, occasionally nodding as Sarah explained her methods. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment, studying her target results and comparing them to the scores of other cadets. Finally, he looked up with an expression that was both impressed and puzzled. "Your approach is unconventional, Chun, but results don't lie. I want you to document your techniques and present them to the instruction staff. What you've developed here might be valuable for other cadets who struggle with traditional marksmanship methods." The request filled Sarah with both pride and anxiety. Recognition from Wade was exactly what she had hoped for, but she knew that presenting her methods to the full instruction staff would invite scrutiny that could expose her unauthorized lab work. She agreed to prepare the presentation, knowing that it represented both an opportunity and a significant risk. As word of Sarah's breakthrough performance spread among the cadets, the dynamic of her relationships began to shift. Some classmates who had previously dismissed her now approached with genuine curiosity about her techniques. Others, particularly those who had been most critical of her unconventional methods, seemed resentful of her sudden success. Marcus Thompson was among the latter group. During a break between training sessions, he cornered Sarah near the equipment lockers, his expression hostile and accusatory. Several other cadets gathered nearby, sensing confrontation and drawn by the drama of the moment. "So Chun, suddenly you're the shooting star of the academy," Thompson said, his voice laden with sarcasm. "Funny how you've been struggling for months and then suddenly you're outperforming Marines and police veterans. Makes a person wonder what changed." Sarah felt her face flush, understanding the implication behind his words. The suggestion that her improvement was somehow illegitimate or the result of cheating was both insulting and uncomfortably close to the truth about her lab access. She forced herself to remain calm, drawing on the same composure that had served her during shooting exercises. "I've been working to improve my technique," she replied evenly. "The same as everyone else here. Sometimes breakthrough moments happen when you find the right approach for your particular skills." Thompson stepped closer, his voice dropping to a level that was intended to be intimidating. "Right approach or right help? Because from where I stand, it looks like someone who's been dead last in tactical evaluations suddenly figured out how to shoot like Annie Oakley. That doesn't happen without assistance." The accusation hung in the air like smoke, and Sarah realized that Thompson's suspicions could easily lead to an investigation that would uncover her unauthorized lab usage. More troubling was the realization that other cadets might share his doubts about the legitimacy of her improvement. Her moment of triumph was already being overshadowed by questions about her integrity. Before Sarah could respond, "Instructor." Wade appeared at the edge of the group, his presence immediately changing the atmosphere of the confrontation. Thompson stepped back, his aggressive posture shifting to something more appropriate for addressing a superior officer. "Is there a problem here?" Wade asked, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp as he assessed the situation. "No problem, sir," Thompson replied quickly. "Just discussing training techniques with Chun." Wade's gaze moved to Sarah, and she saw concern in his expression. "Chun, you're needed in the instruction office. Commander Reeves wants to discuss your training presentation." As Sarah walked away with Wade, she could hear resumed conversations behind her, undoubtedly focused on speculation about her meeting with the Academy's commanding officer. The summons to Reeves' office felt ominous, particularly coming so soon. After Thompson's accusations and her agreement to present her shooting methods to the instruction staff, Commander Reeves' office was a testament to decades of law enforcement service, its walls covered with commendations, photographs, and memorabilia from assignments around the world. Reeves herself was a formidable woman in her 50s whose reputation for demanding excellence had shaped the Academy's culture since her appointment as commander 5 years earlier. Sarah entered the office to find Reeves reviewing a file that she assumed contained her training records and performance evaluations. The commander gestured for her to take a seat, then continued reading for several minutes before looking up with an expression that was difficult to interpret. "Cadet Chun," Reeves began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected people's careers and lives. "Instructor Wade tells me you've experienced a significant improvement in your marksmanship performance. He also indicates that you've developed some unconventional techniques that might be worth sharing with other cadets." "Yes, ma'am," Sarah replied, uncertain where the conversation was heading. "I've been reviewing your overall performance record," Reeves continued, opening the file and scanning several pages. "Your academic scores are excellent, your physical fitness is adequate, and your psychological evaluations indicate strong analytical abilities and emotional stability. However, your tactical performance has been inconsistent, and your weapons proficiency was below Academy standards until very recently." Sarah nodded, understanding that Reeves was building toward a point that would likely determine her future at the academy. The commander's tone was professional but not encouraging, suggesting that Sarah's recent improvement might not be sufficient to offset months of mediocre performance. "The question I need to answer," Reeves said, closing the file and looking directly at Sarah, "is whether your recent improvement represents genuine development of your abilities, or whether it's an anomaly that doesn't reflect your true capabilities. Federal agents need to perform consistently under pressure, not just during occasional breakthrough moments." The implication was clear. Sarah's dramatic improvement in marksmanship had raised questions about her reliability and consistency. Rather than proving her worthiness for graduation, her success had created doubts about whether she could maintain that level of performance when it mattered most. "Ma'am, I understand your concerns," Sarah said, choosing her words carefully. "I believe my recent improvement reflects a better understanding of how to apply my natural abilities to tactical situations. I'm confident that I can maintain and continue to develop these skills." Reeves studied her for a long moment, then made a decision that surprised Sarah completely. "Chun, I'm going to give you an opportunity to prove that confidence. Tomorrow morning, you'll participate in a special evaluation exercise designed specifically to test your shooting abilities under extreme pressure. The scenario will be more challenging than anything you've faced in regular training." Sarah felt her heart rate increase as she processed the unexpected announcement. A special evaluation meant that her performance would be scrutinized by the entire instruction staff, with her graduation hanging in the balance. It was both an opportunity and a tremendous risk. "The exercise will simulate a hostage rescue scenario," Reeves continued, outlining the challenge that would determine Sarah's fate. "You'll need to neutralize multiple targets while avoiding civilian casualties, all under severe time constraints and physical stress. Your performance will be evaluated not just on accuracy, but on decision-making, tactical awareness, and your ability to maintain precision under pressure." As Reeves explained the details of the special evaluation, Sarah realized that this was exactly the type of scenario where her unconventional methods would be most severely tested. The exercise would require her to demonstrate that her precision-based approach could work in the chaotic, high-stakes environment that federal agents faced in the field. The meeting concluded with Reeves' final warning that failure in the special evaluation would result in immediate dismissal from the academy. Sarah left the office knowing that everything she had worked for during the past 6 months would be decided in a single exercise that would test the limits of her abilities and the effectiveness of her unconventional approach to tactical marksmanship. That evening, Sarah returned to the precision shooting lab for what might be her final unauthorized training session. The familiar equipment and controlled environment provided a stark contrast to the chaos she would face in tomorrow's evaluation. As she practiced with the computerized systems, refining her techniques and studying the feedback data, she realized that her time at the academy had taught her more than just how to shoot accurately. She had learned to trust her instincts, to find confidence in her unique approach, and to persist in the face of doubt and criticism. Whether or not she graduated from the academy, she had proven to herself that unconventional methods could achieve exceptional results when applied with dedication and intelligence. The lab's computers tracked her final practice session with their usual precision, recording groupings that were tighter than anything achieved by previous academy cadets. The data showed consistency, accuracy, and technical control that exceeded the standards of traditional marksmanship training. But tomorrow's evaluation would determine whether those objective measurements could translate into real-world performance when everything was on the line. As Sarah prepared to leave the lab, she took a final look at the equipment that had helped her understand her own capabilities. The unauthorized access had been a risk, but it had also been essential to her development as a marksman and as a person. Tomorrow would reveal whether that risk had been worth taking, and whether her unconventional path, Through the academy would lead to the career she had dreamed of since arriving 6 months ago. The walk back to her dormitory felt different than usual, charged with the anticipation and anxiety of knowing that her future would be decided within hours. Other cadets she passed in the corridors looked at her with curiosity, word having spread about her special evaluation. Some offered encouragement, others seemed to view her as entertainment, eager to see whether the academy's most unconventional cadet would succeed or fail in spectacular fashion. In her room, Sarah laid out her gear for the morning evaluation, checking and rechecking every piece of equipment that might affect her performance. Her movements were methodical and precise, the same approach she brought to everything from sewing complex patterns to analyzing shooting data. The ritual was calming, helping her focus on the technical aspects of preparation rather than the enormous pressure of what lay ahead. As lights out approached, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 6 months ago, she had been a small-town seamstress with no experience in law enforcement or tactical operations. Tomorrow she would face an evaluation that would determine whether she had what it took to become a federal agent, or whether her unconventional approach to marksmanship was incompatible with the demands of professional law enforcement. The irony was not lost on her that the very qualities that had made her an outsider at the academy, her methodical precision and analytical approach, might be exactly what was needed to succeed in tomorrow's challenge. The hostage rescue scenario would require the kind of careful accuracy that had characterized her shooting style from the beginning, combined with the confidence and tactical awareness she had developed through months of training and criticism. Sarah knew that regardless of tomorrow's outcome, she had already achieved something significant. She had proven that there were multiple paths to excellence in tactical marksmanship, and that unconventional methods could produce results that rivaled or exceeded traditional approaches. Whether the academy recognized and valued those results would determine her immediate future, but could not diminish the confidence she had gained in her own abilities. The final hours before the evaluation passed slowly, filled with the kind of restless anticipation that preceded any significant test. Sarah dozed fitfully, her dreams mixing images of targets and technical data with memories of her mother's sewing shop and the quiet confidence that came from creating something perfect through patience and precision. When the morning alarm sounded, Sarah was already awake, her mind clear and focused on the challenge ahead. Today would be different from any previous training exercise or evaluation. Today, she would have the opportunity to demonstrate that precision and methodical excellence could triumph over conventional expectations, and that sometimes the most unconventional candidate could achieve the most extraordinary results. The simulation facility at dawn looked like something from a dystopian nightmare. Sarah stood at the entrance to the urban warfare training complex, studying the maze of concrete buildings, narrow alleyways, and multi-story structures that had been designed to replicate the most challenging environments federal agents might encounter. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across the artificial cityscape, while hidden speakers crackled with the ambient sounds of a metropolitan area in crisis. Commander Reeves addressed the assembled observation team from an elevated platform overlooking the training area. The group included not only the Academy's instruction staff, but also several federal agents from active field offices who had been brought in to evaluate the unconventional cadet who had requested this extraordinary assessment. Sarah could feel their collective skepticism as they reviewed her file and discussed her recent performance improvements in hushed tones. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reeves announced, her voice carrying clearly across the observation area, "today's exercise represents a departure from standard Academy protocols. Cadet Chen has demonstrated significant improvement in controlled marksmanship scenarios, but questions remain about her ability to apply those skills in dynamic, high-pressure situations." Sarah listened to the briefing while conducting her final equipment check, her movements automatic and precise, despite the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. Her gear felt different today, heavier somehow, as if the weight of everyone's expectations had somehow transferred to her physical equipment. The weapon she carried was the standard issue pistol used throughout the academy, but she had requested and received permission to make minor adjustments to the grip and sight alignment that better accommodated her shooting style. The scenario briefing was delivered by Instructor Wade, who had advocated for giving Sarah this opportunity despite his own reservations about her readiness. His voice was professional but tense as he outlined the parameters of the exercise that would determine her future at the academy. The scenario involves a hostage situation in a multi-story office building, Wade explained, pointing to the central structure in the training complex. Intelligence indicates that 3 armed suspects have taken control of the building and are holding an unknown number of civilian hostages. Your mission is to neutralize the threats while ensuring the safety of all innocent personnel. Sarah nodded, absorbing the details while mentally mapping the building's layout based on her study of the training facility's blueprints. She had spent hours analyzing the architectural plans during her unauthorized lab sessions, understanding that thorough preparation was the foundation of successful tactical operations. The suspects are armed and considered extremely dangerous, Wade continued. They have been trained to respond aggressively to any law enforcement presence. Intelligence suggests they may be wearing body armor, requiring precise shot placement. For effective neutralization, civilian hostages will be present throughout the building, requiring absolute discrimination in target identification. The parameters of the exercise were designed to test every aspect of tactical marksmanship that the Academy considered essential for federal agents. Speed, accuracy, decision-making under pressure, and the ability to operate effectively in a complex environment where split-second choices could mean the difference between saving lives and creating additional casualties. What made the scenario particularly challenging was the inclusion of moving targets, changing lighting conditions, and multiple levels that would require Sarah to adapt her shooting position and technique throughout the exercise. The suspects would be portrayed by Academy instructors wearing protective gear, trained to provide realistic opposition while ensuring the safety of the evaluation. As Sarah reviewed the building layout one final time, she noticed Thompson and several other cadets gathering near the observation area. Their presence added another layer of pressure to an already intense situation, as she realized that her performance would be witnessed not only by the instructional staff, but also by her peers who had questioned her capabilities throughout the training program. "Chun," Commander Reeves called out, approaching Sarah with a final briefing document. "The exercise will be monitored by multiple camera angles and real-time tracking systems. Every shot you fire will be recorded and analyzed for accuracy, timing, and tactical appropriateness. You'll have access to standard communication equipment, but backup will not be available. This is a solo operation." The emphasis on solo operation was significant, as it meant that Sarah would not have the support and collaborative decision-making that characterized most real-world tactical operations. She would need to rely entirely on her own judgment and abilities, with no opportunity to defer to more experienced agents or share the responsibility for critical decisions. Sarah accepted the briefing document and moved toward the building entrance, her mind shifting into the focused state that had become familiar during her precision shooting sessions. The chaotic environment of the training complex faded into background noise as she concentrated on the task ahead, drawing on the methodical preparation that had characterized her approach to every challenge at the Academy. The entry point was a ground floor door that had been left partially open, suggesting that the suspects had not yet secured all access points to the building. Sarah approached cautiously, her weapon ready but not raised, as she assessed the initial tactical situation. The interior of the building was dimly lit, with emergency lighting providing just enough illumination to navigate the corridors while creating the shadows and blind spots that made tactical operations so challenging. Her first encounter came within minutes of entering the building. A figure appeared at the end of a corridor, moving quickly between doorways in a pattern that suggested either a suspect conducting reconnaissance or a hostage attempting to escape. Sarah raised her weapon, acquiring the target through her sights, while simultaneously processing the visual information that would determine whether this was a threat to be neutralized or a civilian to be protected. The target's movement pattern and body language suggested aggressive intent, but Sarah held her fire for an additional second to confirm the threat assessment. When the figure raised what appeared to be a weapon in her direction, she made the decision to engage, her finger moving to the trigger with the same precise control she had practiced thousands of times in the lab. The shot was perfect, a center mass hit that would have incapacitated a real threat while avoiding any risk to potential hostages in the surrounding area. The instructor playing the suspect acknowledged the hit and moved to a position where he could observe the remainder of the exercise without interfering with the scenario. Sarah's confidence increased as she moved deeper into the building, her tactical awareness enhanced by the successful engagement. The precision shooting techniques she had developed translated effectively to the dynamic environment, allowing her to maintain accuracy while adapting to changing conditions and multiple potential threats. The second floor presented a more complex challenge, with multiple rooms containing scenarios that required different tactical responses. Sarah discovered her first hostage situation in what appeared to be a conference room where an instructor portraying a suspect held two academy staff members who were playing the role of civilian captives. The geometry of the situation was complicated, with the suspect positioned behind partial cover while keeping the hostages between himself and the doorway where Sarah was positioned. A traditional tactical approach would have required multiple agents to establish crossfire positions and coordinate a simultaneous response. Sarah was operating alone, requiring her to develop a solution that relied entirely on precision and timing. She studied the scene for several seconds, analyzing angles and sight lines with the same methodical approach she brought to complex sewing patterns. The suspect's position offered a narrow window of opportunity for a precise shot that would neutralize the threat without endangering the hostages, but the timing would need to be perfect. Sarah positioned herself carefully, using the doorframe for stability while minimizing her exposure to return fire. She controlled her breathing, settled into the shooting position that had become second nature through months of practice, and waited for the moment when the suspect's movement would provide the clear shot she needed. The opportunity came when the suspect shifted position slightly, creating a brief opening that would allow Sarah to engage without risk to the hostages. Her shot was instantaneous and precise, striking the target in a location that would have immediately incapacitated a real threat. The instructor acknowledged the hit, and the hostages were directed to safety positions where they would remain until the exercise concluded. Moving to the third floor, Sarah encountered the most challenging scenario of the exercise. Multiple suspects occupied different rooms, with hostages scattered throughout the level in positions that made coordination and communication essential for a successful resolution. The lighting was deliberately poor, and the suspects had been instructed to move frequently, creating a dynamic situation that would test every aspect of tactical marksmanship. Sarah's approach to this level demonstrated the evolution of her tactical thinking throughout the exercise. Rather than attempting to clear rooms in rapid succession, she used her analytical abilities to understand the overall situation and develop a systematic approach that would minimize risk while ensuring all threats were neutralized. She positioned herself at a central location that provided sight lines to multiple rooms, then used verbal commands to control the movement of suspects and hostages. Her communication was clear and authoritative, demonstrating the confidence and leadership ability that the Academy sought in federal agent candidates. When the suspects attempted to coordinate their response, Sarah was ready with precisely timed shots that eliminated each threat in sequence. Her accuracy was flawless. Each shot placed exactly where it needed to be to stop the threat without creating collateral damage. The methodical precision that had characterized her approach throughout the academy now operated at a speed and efficiency that matched the demands of tactical operations. The final challenge came when one of the suspects attempted to escape through a stairwell, creating a moving target scenario that required Sarah to engage, while compensating for both her own movement and that of the threat. This was the type of dynamic shooting that had been her greatest weakness during regular training, where her methodical approach seemed incompatible with the rapid decision-making required for moving targets. But Sarah's experience in the precision lab had taught her that even dynamic situations could be approached with analytical thinking and careful preparation. She anticipated the suspect's movement pattern, positioned herself to intercept his escape route, and delivered a shot that stopped the threat while maintaining complete control over her weapon and surroundings. The exercise concluded with Sarah successfully clearing the entire building, neutralizing all threats, and ensuring the safety of every hostage. Her performance had been observed and recorded by multiple monitoring systems, providing objective data about her accuracy, timing, and tactical decision-making throughout the scenario. As Sarah emerged from the building, she was met by Commander Reeves and the assembled evaluation team. Their expressions were difficult to read, but she sensed a level of surprise and interest that had not been present at the beginning of the exercise. The skepticism that had characterized the morning briefing had been replaced by something that looked very much like professional respect. "Chun," Commander Reeves said, approaching her with the preliminary evaluation results, "your performance in this exercise was exceptional. Every shot was placed precisely where it needed to be. Your tactical decision-making was sound, and you demonstrated the kind of composure under pressure that we look for in federal agents." Sarah felt a surge of relief and vindication, but she also noticed that the evaluation team was engaged in intense discussion about aspects of her performance that seemed to have surprised them. Instructor Wade was reviewing digital recordings of her shooting technique, pointing out details to the other observers that were generating considerable interest. The formal debriefing took place in the Academy's main conference room, where Sarah's performance was analyzed in detail using the multiple camera angles and sensor data that had been collected throughout the exercise. The technological analysis provided objective confirmation of what the observers had witnessed, documenting accuracy levels and response times that exceeded Academy standards for tactical marksmanship. "Your shooting technique is unlike anything we typically see in federal agent training," observed Agent Martinez, one of the field agents who had been brought in to evaluate the exercise. "Your approach is more methodical than we usually recommend for tactical situations, but your results demonstrate that precision can be just as effective as speed when applied correctly." The discussion that followed revealed that Sarah's performance had challenged some fundamental assumptions about tactical marksmanship training. Her success using unconventional techniques suggested that the Academy's standardized approaches might not be optimal for all candidates, and that there could be value in developing training methods that accommodated different learning styles and natural abilities. But not everyone in the room was convinced that Sarah's success represented a genuine advancement in tactical thinking. Agent Davis, a veteran instructor from the Academy's tactical division, expressed concerns about the implications of departing from proven training methods. "Chun's performance today was impressive," Davis acknowledged, "but we need to consider whether her approach would be sustainable under the extreme stress of actual field operations. The controlled environment of a training exercise, even a challenging one, cannot fully replicate the chaos and unpredictability of real tactical situations." The criticism was valid and reflected legitimate concerns about the difference between training performance and operational effectiveness. Sarah understood that her success in the exercise was only the first step in proving that her unconventional methods could be trusted in real-world situations where lives depended on split-second decisions and flawless execution. Commander Reeves listened to the discussion with the careful attention of someone who understood that the decision about Sarah's future would set precedents for how the Academy approached unconventional candidates in the future. The evaluation had raised questions that extended beyond Sarah's individual case to fundamental issues about training philosophy and the criteria used to identify successful federal agents. "The question we need to answer," Reeves said, addressing the assembled evaluation team, "is whether exceptional performance in controlled conditions translates to reliable performance in operational environments. Chun has demonstrated remarkable precision and tactical thinking, but federal agents face situations that cannot be anticipated or prepared for through training alone." The discussion continued for nearly an hour, with various members of the evaluation team presenting arguments for and against recommending Sarah for graduation. The technical aspects of her performance were undeniably impressive, but questions remained about her ability to adapt her methodical approach to the unpredictable demands of federal law enforcement. Sarah listened to the debate about her future with growing frustration. She had proven her capabilities in the most challenging evaluation the Academy could devise, yet her success was being questioned because it had been achieved through unconventional methods. The very precision and analytical thinking that had enabled her exceptional performance were being treated as potential weaknesses rather than strengths. Finally, Agent Martinez spoke up with a perspective that shifted the tone of the discussion. "I've been working tactical operations for 15 years, and I can tell you that the most successful agents are not necessarily those who follow standard procedures. They're the ones who can think clearly under pressure and adapt their skills to whatever situation they encounter." Chun demonstrated both of those qualities today. The endorsement from an experienced field agent carried significant weight with the evaluation team, but Sarah could see that the decision about her future was far from resolved. Commander Reeves announced that the evaluation team would need additional time to review the data and reach a consensus about her recommendation for graduation. As the formal debriefing concluded, Sarah found herself approached by several members of the evaluation team who wanted to discuss her training methods and shooting techniques in greater detail. Their questions were probing and technical, focusing on the specific aspects of her approach that had enabled such precise performance under pressure. The attention was gratifying, but Sarah was also aware that it came with increased scrutiny of her entire training record. Her unauthorized use of the precision lab would likely be discovered if the evaluation team decided to conduct a thorough investigation of how she had developed her unconventional techniques. That evening, Sarah returned to her dormitory to find that word of her exceptional performance had spread throughout the Academy. Some of her fellow cadets approached her with genuine congratulations and curiosity about her methods, while others seemed skeptical or resentful of the attention she was receiving. Thompson was among the latter group, approaching her in the common area with an expression that suggested he was not impressed by her success in the evaluation exercise. His comments were carefully worded to avoid direct confrontation, but his skepticism about her performance was unmistakable. "Interesting how you managed to pull off such a perfect performance just when you needed it most," Thompson said, his tone neutral but his implication clear. "Makes a person wonder whether you've been holding back during regular training, or whether you had some kind of special preparation for today's exercise." Sarah recognized the accusation behind his words, understanding that Thompson suspected she had somehow gained unauthorized access to information about the exercise or received special coaching that gave her an unfair advantage. The truth about her lab access was close enough to his suspicions to make her uncomfortable, even though her actual preparation had been focused on developing general skills rather than preparing for any specific scenario. I've been working to improve my technique throughout the training program, Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady. Today's exercise gave me the opportunity to demonstrate what I've learned. Thompson's expression suggested he was not satisfied with her response, but before he could continue the conversation, they were interrupted by the arrival of Instructor Wade. His presence immediately changed the dynamic of the interaction, as Thompson stepped back to maintain appropriate respect for the Academy's chain of command. "Chun," Wade said, "Commander Reeves wants to see you in her office. There's been a development regarding your evaluation status." The summons to Reeves' office filled Sarah with apprehension as she wondered whether the development was positive or negative. The timing suggested that the evaluation team had reached some kind of decision, but Wade's expression provided no clues about the nature of that decision. As they walked toward the administration building, Wade broke the silence with comments about her performance that suggested his own perspective on her future at the Academy. "Chun, what you accomplished today was remarkable by any standard. Your precision under pressure was unlike anything I've seen in 20 years of tactical instruction." The praise was encouraging, but Sarah detected a note of concern in Wade's voice that suggested the evaluation results were not straightforward. She prepared herself for news that could range from immediate graduation to dismissal from the program, understanding that her unconventional path through the Academy had created a situation that could not be resolved through standard procedures. Commander Reeves' office felt different during this evening visit, charged with the tension of a decision that would affect not only Sarah's future, but also the Academy's approach to evaluating unconventional candidates. Reeves was reviewing documents when Sarah entered, her expression serious as she gestured for her to take a seat. "Chun," Reeves began, "the evaluation team has completed their analysis of your performance, and I need to discuss the results with you." Sarah braced herself for what was coming, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether her 6 months at the Academy had been a success or a failure. The methodical preparation and unconventional techniques that had brought her to this moment were about to be judged by standards that might not be designed to recognize their value. "Your technical performance in today's exercise was exceptional," Reeves continued, opening a file that contained detailed analysis of the evaluation data. "Every shot was placed with precision that exceeded Academy standards. Your tactical decision-making was sound, and you demonstrated remarkable composure under pressure." The positive assessment filled Sarah with hope, but she noticed that Reeves had not yet reached the conclusion of her evaluation. The praise felt like preparation for more complex news that would require careful explanation. "However," Reeves said, confirming Sarah's suspicion that the evaluation results were not entirely straightforward, "the team has identified some concerns about your training methodology that need to be addressed before we can make a final determination about your graduation status." Sarah felt her stomach tighten as she realized that her unauthorized lab access had likely been discovered during the investigation of her performance. The exceptional results of the evaluation had drawn attention that led to scrutiny of her entire training record, exposing the rule violations that had been essential to her development as a marksman. "During the course of reviewing your training history," Reeves continued, "we discovered that you had been accessing the precision shooting laboratory outside of authorized hours and without proper supervision. This represents a serious violation of Academy security protocols." The accusation was stated matter-of-factly, without anger or disappointment, but Sarah understood that security violations were among the most serious offenses a cadet could commit. The unauthorized access that had been essential to her success was now threatening to destroy everything she had accomplished. "Ma'am," Sarah said, understanding that her response to this accusation would likely determine her fate, "I accept full responsibility for accessing the lab without authorization. I used that time to study marksmanship techniques and develop my skills, not to gain any unfair advantage in evaluations or exercises." Reeves studied her carefully, apparently evaluating not just her admission of guilt, but also her honesty and willingness to accept responsibility for her actions. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Sarah waited to learn whether her violations would result in immediate dismissal or some other consequence. "Chun," Reeves finally said, "your unauthorized lab access was clearly a violation of Academy regulations. However, the evaluation team has also concluded that your use of that access was focused on legitimate skill development rather than gaining unfair advantages in specific exercises." The distinction was important, as it suggested that Sarah's violations were being viewed as misconduct rather than cheating. The difference might be significant in determining the consequences she would face, and whether she would have any opportunity to continue in the program. "The evaluation team has made a recommendation regarding your status," Reeves continued, "but the final decision rests with me as Academy Commander. Your technical abilities are clearly exceptional, and your performance today demonstrated qualities that we value in federal agents. However, your willingness to violate regulations raises questions about your judgment and reliability." Sarah realized that her future hung in the balance of Commander Reeves' assessment of whether her strengths outweighed her violations, and whether the Academy could trust a graduate who had demonstrated such a willingness to bend rules in pursuit of her goals. The decision, when it came, was unlike anything Sarah had anticipated. Commander Reeves announced that her graduation status would be determined by one final test, a real-world operation where she would have the opportunity to prove that her skills could be trusted in actual field conditions. The assignment would place her under the supervision of experienced agents, but would also provide the definitive answer to questions about whether her unconventional training methods could produce reliable operational performance. The news was both thrilling and terrifying, as Sarah realized that she would have the opportunity to prove herself in actual federal law enforcement operations. But she also understood that failure in a real-world assignment would end her career permanently, with no possibility of appeal or second chances. As she left Commander Reeves' office that evening, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this unprecedented opportunity. Her unauthorized lab access and unconventional training methods had created a situation that required an equally unconventional solution. In 2 weeks, she would learn whether her methodical precision and analytical approach to tactical marksmanship could succeed in the unpredictable world of actual federal operations. The warehouse district of Seattle looked abandoned in the pre-dawn darkness, its maze of industrial buildings and shipping containers, creating perfect cover for the kind of criminal operations that federal agents spent years tracking. Sarah crouched behind a concrete barrier, her earpiece crackling with radio chatter as the Joint Task Force coordinated their approach to what intelligence suggested was a major arms trafficking hub. 2 weeks had passed since Commander Reeves delivered her ultimatum, and now Sarah found herself in the middle of her first real federal operation. The assignment was officially described as a training exercise with experienced agents, but everyone involved understood that her performance here would determine whether she graduated from the Academy or returned home to Oregon in failure. Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez led the tactical team that had been assembled for the operation. A 15-year veteran with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, Rodriguez had volunteered to supervise Sarah's field evaluation after reviewing the Academy reports about her unconventional shooting methods, her reputation for developing innovative tactical approaches made her the ideal mentor for an agent whose training had challenged traditional assumptions about marksmanship. "Chun, status report," Rodriguez whispered into her microphone, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise of the industrial district. "Position Alpha secured," Sarah replied, her own voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Clear sight lines to the main warehouse entrance. No movement detected." The operation had been planned with meticulous attention to detail, but Sarah understood that real tactical situations rarely followed the script. Intelligence indicated that the warehouse contained a sophisticated weapons trafficking operation run by a group with military training and access to high-powered firearms. The suspects were known to be armed and dangerous, with a history of violent resistance to law enforcement operations. Sarah's role in the operation was officially limited to providing perimeter security and backup support for the more experienced agents who would conduct the actual building clearance. But Rodriguez had made it clear that Sarah's performance would be evaluated based on her ability to adapt to changing circumstances and provide effective support wherever it was needed. The initial approach proceeded according to plan, with teams moving into position around the warehouse complex while maintaining radio silence to avoid alerting the suspects inside. Sarah monitored her assigned sector, using the analytical skills she had developed during her academy training to assess potential threats and escape routes that the suspects might attempt to use. The first indication that the operation was not going to follow the planned script came when motion sensors detected unexpected movement in a section of the warehouse that intelligence had indicated should be empty. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the radio with updated instructions that immediately changed the tactical situation. All units, be advised we have movement in the East Wing. Possible additional suspects not accounted for in our intelligence. Briefing, Teams 2 and 3, adjust positions to cover potential exit points. Sarah processed the new information while maintaining her observation of the main entrance. The discovery of additional suspects meant that the careful choreography of the planned operation had been compromised, requiring real-time adaptation of tactical approaches and positioning. This was exactly the kind of dynamic situation where her methodical academy training would be tested against the unpredictable realities of field operations. The first shots came without warning, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness as suspects inside the warehouse opened fire on the advancing tactical teams. The sound of automatic weapons echoed off the concrete walls of the surrounding buildings, creating a cacophony that made radio communication almost impossible. "Contact, contact," Rodriguez's voice shouted over the radio. "Team 1 taking fire from multiple positions. Chun, maintain your position and provide overwatch." Sarah's training took over as she raised her weapon and began scanning for targets through her scope. The warehouse windows provided limited visibility into the interior, but she could see muzzle flashes that indicated the positions of suspects engaging the tactical teams. Her role was to provide precision fire support that would help suppress the enemy while allowing the entry teams to advance. The geometry of the tactical situation was complex, with multiple levels in the warehouse and suspects positioned at various windows and doorways. Sarah needed to identify legitimate targets, while avoiding any possibility of friendly fire against the federal agents who were attempting to clear the building. The precision shooting skills she had developed at the academy were now being tested in conditions where a single mistake could result in casualties among her own team. Her first shot came when a suspect appeared at a second-story window, clearly attempting to engage Team 1 with what appeared to be a high-powered rifle. Sarah's crosshairs settled on the target with the same methodical precision she had practiced thousands of times in the academy lab. The shot was clean and decisive, neutralizing the threat and allowing the entry team to advance to their next position. "Excellent shot, Chun," Rodriguez's voice came through the radio. "Target down, Team 1 is mobile." The validation from Rodriguez was encouraging, but Sarah knew that the operation was far from over. Radio chatter indicated that the warehouse contained more suspects than intelligence had suggested, and the tactical teams were encountering organized resistance that suggested military-level training and coordination. As the operation progressed, Sarah found herself engaging multiple targets from her overwatch position. Each shot required careful calculation of angles, distance, and the positions of friendly forces to ensure that her fire support helped rather than hindered the tactical teams. Her unconventional shooting methods, which had seemed so different from standard academy training, proved perfectly suited to the precision requirements of real-world operations. The critical moment came when Team 2 became pinned down in the warehouse's main floor by suspects positioned on an elevated catwalk. The team's position provided good cover from direct fire, but left them unable to advance or retreat without exposing themselves to the elevated threats. Radio traffic indicated that the team leader had been wounded, and that the unit needed immediate support to avoid becoming casualties. "Chun, we need precision fire on the catwalk positions," Rodriguez commanded. "Team 2 is trapped and needs those elevated threats eliminated. Can you make those shots?" Sarah studied the tactical situation through her scope, analyzing the angles and distances involved in engaging targets on the catwalk while avoiding any risk to the pinned-down agents below. The shots would require threading the needle between the steel beams of the warehouse structure, with margin for error measured in inches rather than feet. "I have the shots," Sarah replied, her voice calm despite the complexity of what she was being asked to attempt. Beginning engagement. Her first shot struck the lead suspect on the catwalk, a precisely placed round that immediately eliminated the primary threat to Team 2. The second suspect, alerted by his partner's fall, moved to a position that offered him better cover, but also provided Sarah with a clearer shot angle. Her second round found its mark with the same precision as the first, neutralizing the threat and allowing Team 2 to resume their advance. "Outstanding shooting, Chun," Rodriguez's voice carried a note of genuine admiration. "Team 2 is mobile and advancing to their objective." The successful engagement from her overwatch position demonstrated that Sarah's precision shooting skills could be decisive in real tactical operations. But the operation was far from over, and she knew that maintaining that level of performance throughout the entire engagement would be essential to proving that her unconventional training methods could be trusted in field conditions. The warehouse clearance continued for another 40 minutes, with Sarah providing precision fire support for multiple tactical teams as they systematically cleared the complex. Her shooting was flawless throughout the operation, each round placed exactly where it needed to be to neutralize threats without creating collateral damage or risking friendly casualties. When the last suspect was neutralized and the warehouse was declared secure, Sarah remained in position until Rodriguez gave the all-clear signal. The operation had been a complete success, with the entire weapons trafficking network disrupted and substantial evidence seized for prosecution. More importantly for Sarah's future, her performance had been witnessed by experienced federal agents who could provide authoritative evaluation of her capabilities in real operational conditions. The post-operation briefing took place in a mobile command center that had been established in the warehouse district. Sarah sat with the other members of the tactical teams as Rodriguez and the operation commander reviewed the engagement and analyzed the lessons learned from the successful mission. Chun's precision fire support was instrumental in the success of this operation, Rodriguez reported to the assembled team. Her ability to engage multiple targets at varying distances while maintaining perfect discrimination between threats and friendly forces demonstrates exactly the kind of marksmanship skills we need in federal operations. The praise from Rodriguez was significant, but Sarah noticed that her performance was being discussed in terms that went beyond simple marksmanship. The experienced agents were analyzing her tactical decision-making, her communication under pressure, and her ability to adapt to changing circumstances throughout the operation. Agent Kevin Sullivan, who had led Team 2 during their engagement on the warehouse floor, approached Sarah after the formal briefing with comments that provided insight into how her performance was being evaluated by operational agents. "Chun, those shots you made from the overwatch position saved my team from a very bad situation," Sullivan said, his tone reflecting genuine gratitude. "But what impressed me most was your composure under pressure. You took the time to make sure each shot was perfect, even when my guys were taking fire. That kind of discipline is exactly what we need in complex operations. The feedback from Sullivan and other team members provided Sarah with confirmation that her methodical approach to tactical shooting was not only effective in controlled training environments, but also valuable in the chaotic conditions of real federal operations. Her precision-based techniques had proven their worth when lives were actually at stake. The formal evaluation of Sarah's field performance was conducted by a review board that included Rodriguez, Sullivan, and several other experienced federal agents who had participated in the warehouse operation. Their assessment would be forwarded to Commander Reeves at the Academy, providing the definitive judgment about Sarah's readiness for graduation and federal law enforcement service. The evaluation session took place in a secure conference room at the Seattle field office, where Sarah's performance was analyzed using operational reports, radio transcripts, and testimony from the agents who had worked with her during the warehouse operation. The level of scrutiny was intense, but Sarah felt confident that her performance had demonstrated the capabilities that the Academy sought in federal agent candidates. Agent Chun, Rodriguez began, using the title that suggested her evaluation was positive. Your performance during yesterday's operation exceeded our expectations in every category. Your marksmanship was flawless, your tactical judgment was sound, and your communication under pressure was professional and effective. The use of Agent Chun rather than Cadet Chun was not lost on Sarah, as it suggested that Rodriguez was already thinking of her as a graduated federal agent rather than an Academy candidate still under evaluation. The shift in terminology felt like unofficial confirmation that her field test had been successful. Your shooting technique is unconventional, Agent Sullivan added, but your results speak for themselves. The precision you demonstrated during the warehouse operation would be difficult to match even by agents with years of field experience. The positive feedback continued as each member of the evaluation board provided their assessment of Sarah's performance. The unanimous conclusion was that her field test had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded Academy standards and proved that her unconventional training methods could produce exceptional results in operational conditions. But the evaluation board also addressed the broader implications of Sarah's success for federal law enforcement training and recruitment. Her unconventional path through the Academy had challenged assumptions about the most effective methods for developing tactical marksmanship skills, suggesting that there might be value in accommodating different learning styles and natural abilities. Agent Chun's success suggests that we may need to reconsider some of our training methodologies, Rodriguez observed. Her precision-based approach achieved results that rival or exceed traditional tactical shooting methods. That has implications for how we train future agents. The discussion that followed revealed that Sarah's case had already generated interest at higher levels of federal law enforcement leadership. Her success using unconventional methods had attracted attention from training specialists and operational commanders who were always looking for ways to improve agent effectiveness and adapt to evolving tactical challenges. 3 days after the warehouse operation, Sarah received notification that she was to report to Commander Reeves at the Academy for final resolution of her graduation status. The message provided no indication of the evaluation board's recommendation, but Sarah felt confident that her field performance had demonstrated everything that could reasonably be expected of a federal agent candidate. The return to the Academy felt strange after experiencing real operational conditions in Seattle. The controlled environment of the training facility seemed almost artificial compared to the dynamic challenges of the warehouse operation, where split-second decisions and precise execution had immediate consequences for the safety of her fellow agents. Commander Reeves' office was crowded when Sarah arrived for what she assumed would be her final meeting as an Academy cadet. In addition to Reeves herself, the room contained Instructor Wade, Agent Rodriguez, and several other officials whose presence suggested that Sarah's case had implications beyond her individual graduation. "Chun," Commander Reeves began, "we've received the evaluation reports from your field assignment, and I want to discuss the results with you." Sarah waited for the verdict that would determine her future, understanding that the next few minutes would reveal whether her unconventional journey through the academy had been successful or whether her violations and non-traditional methods had ultimately prevented her from achieving her goal of becoming a federal agent. The evaluation board's recommendation was unanimous. Reeves continued, opening a file that contained the formal assessment of Sarah's field performance. "Your tactical marksmanship skills are exceptional. Your decision-making under pressure is sound, and your ability to perform in operational conditions exceeds academy standards." The positive assessment filled Sarah with relief and excitement, but she noticed that Reeves had not yet announced her graduation status. The formal language suggested that additional considerations were being factored into the final decision about her future. "However," Reeves said, confirming Sarah's suspicion that the evaluation was more complex than simple pass or fail, "your case has raised important questions about academy training methods and evaluation criteria that require careful consideration." Sarah realized that her success had created a situation that extended beyond her individual graduation to fundamental questions about how the academy should approach candidates with unconventional backgrounds and training methods. Her case was being viewed as a test case that could influence future training policies and recruitment strategies. "Agent Rodriguez has recommended that you be graduated immediately and assigned to a specialized marksmanship unit where your skills can be fully utilized," Reeves announced. "But she has also recommended that you be asked to participate in a comprehensive study of your training methods to help us improve academy instruction for future candidates." The proposal was both gratifying and daunting, as it meant that Sarah's unconventional path would be studied and potentially incorporated into official academy training programs. Her success had validated her methods, but it also meant that her techniques would be scrutinized and analyzed by experts who would determine their broader applicability. "Chun," Reeves said, "are you prepared to graduate from this academy and begin your career as a federal agent?" "Yes, ma'am," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the emotion of finally achieving the goal that had seemed impossible just weeks earlier. The graduation ceremony was unlike anything Sarah had imagined during her months at the academy. Instead of the large group celebration she had expected, her graduation was a small ceremony attended by the academy staff and federal agents who had been involved in her evaluation. The intimate setting felt appropriate for someone whose path through the academy had been so different from traditional candidates. Commander Reeves presented Sarah with her federal agent credentials and badge, symbols of the authority and responsibility that came with graduation from the academy. The moment felt surreal after months of uncertainty about whether her unconventional methods would be accepted by the federal law enforcement community. "Agent Chun," Reeves said during the ceremony, "your graduation represents not just individual achievement, but also validation of the principle that excellence can be achieved through multiple paths. Your success will influence how this academy approaches training and evaluation for years to come." The assignment that followed graduation was everything Sarah could have hoped for. She was posted to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's elite marksmanship unit, where her precision shooting skills would be used to support the most challenging tactical operations in federal law enforcement. The unit specialized in situations that required absolute accuracy under extreme pressure, exactly the type of work that matched her capabilities. Her first assignment with the marksmanship unit came just 2 weeks after graduation, when the FI team was called to support a hostage rescue operation at a federal courthouse. The situation involved armed suspects who had taken control of a courtroom and were threatening to execute hostages unless their demands were met. Sarah found herself positioned on a rooftop overlooking the courthouse, providing precision fire support for tactical teams that were attempting to resolve the situation. The shots required were at the extreme range of tactical marksmanship, through courthouse windows at targets who were using hostages as human shields. The geometry of the situation was impossibly complex, requiring shots that would neutralize threats while ensuring absolute safety for the hostages who were being held just inches away from the armed suspects. Traditional tactical shooting methods would have made such shots too risky to attempt, but Sarah's precision-based approach provided the accuracy needed to save lives. Her performance during the courthouse operation was flawless, with each shot placed exactly where it needed to be to eliminate threats without endangering innocent people. The successful resolution of the hostage situation demonstrated that her academy training and field experience had prepared her for the most challenging scenarios that federal agents could face. The success of the courthouse operation led to additional assignments that showcased Sarah's unique capabilities. Federal law enforcement agencies began requesting her specifically for operations that required extreme precision and careful judgment, recognizing that her unconventional training had produced skills that were rare even among experienced agents. Within 6 months of graduation, Sarah had participated in more than a dozen major federal operations, each one demonstrating that her precision-based marksmanship methods were not just effective in controlled training environments, but superior to traditional approaches in many real-world situations. The recognition of her capabilities extended beyond operational assignments to training and instruction responsibilities. Sarah was asked to develop new marksmanship training curricula that incorporated her analytical approach to precision shooting, helping other agents learn techniques that could improve their own operational effectiveness. The academy that had once questioned whether her unconventional methods were compatible with federal law enforcement now sent instructors to learn from her techniques. Sarah found herself teaching the same precision-based approaches that had been criticized during her own training, demonstrating that excellence could indeed be achieved through multiple paths. The transformation from questioned cadet to respected instructor was complete when Sarah was invited to return to the Federal Tactical Training Academy as a guest lecturer. Standing in the same classroom where she had once been dismissed as too unconventional, she addressed a new class of cadets who were facing their own challenges with traditional training methods. Excellence in federal law enforcement is not about following a single prescribed path, Sarah told the assembled cadets, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had proven that unconventional approaches could achieve extraordinary results. It's about finding the methods that allow you to perform at your highest level when lives depend on your skills. Her lecture drew on lessons learned from her own academy experience and the operational assignments that had followed graduation. She emphasized the importance of understanding fundamental principles while remaining open to innovative approaches that could enhance effectiveness and adaptability. The cadets listened with the kind of attention that Sarah remembered wishing for during her own academy training. Some of them were clearly struggling with traditional training methods, looking for alternative approaches that might better match their natural abilities and learning styles. After the lecture, several cadets approached Sarah with questions about her techniques and training methods. Their eagerness to learn reminded her of her own determination to find ways to excel despite the challenges she had faced at the academy. Agent Chun, one of the cadets asked, "How did you know that your methods would work in real operations when everyone told you they were wrong?" Sarah considered the question carefully, remembering the doubt and criticism she had faced during her own training. Her answer drew on lessons that extended beyond marksmanship to fundamental principles of perseverance and self-confidence. "I didn't know they would work," she replied honestly, "but I knew that I had to find an approach that allowed me to perform at my best." Sometimes proving that you're right requires taking risks that others aren't willing to take. The conversation with the cadets continued long after the formal lecture ended, with Sarah sharing insights about tactical marksmanship, federal law, enforcement careers, and the importance of maintaining confidence in the face of criticism and doubt. As Sarah prepared to leave the academy that evening, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from questioned cadet to respected instructor. The precision shooting techniques that had once been criticized as unconventional were now being studied and taught as innovative approaches to tactical marksmanship. Her success had validated the principle that excellence could be achieved through multiple paths, and that sometimes the most effective approaches were those that challenged traditional assumptions about training and performance. The academy, that had once questioned whether she belonged in federal law enforcement, now held her up as an example of how innovation and determination could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The drive away from the academy took Sarah past the precision shooting lab, where she had spent countless unauthorized hours developing the techniques that would define her career. The facility was now officially open to cadets with unconventional training needs, a policy change that had resulted directly from her success and the recognition that different learning styles could produce exceptional results. 6 months later, Sarah received notification that she had been selected for promotion to supervisory special agent, a recognition of her operational effectiveness and her contributions to federal law enforcement training methods. The promotion came with assignment to lead the marksmanship unit where she had begun her federal career, bringing her full circle from cadet to instructor to leader. The ceremony for her promotion was attended by many of the people who had been involved in her academy training and early career assignments. Commander Reeves spoke about Sarah's impact on federal law enforcement training, describing how her success had influenced policies and procedures that would benefit future generations of agents. Agent Rodriguez, who had supervised Sarah's field evaluation, presented her with the supervisory badge that symbolized her new responsibilities. The moment felt like validation not just of Sarah's individual achievements, but of the principle that federal law enforcement was strengthened by embracing innovation and recognizing excellence regardless of its source. As Sarah accepted her new assignment, she understood that her success had created opportunities not just for herself, but for future cadets who might follow unconventional paths through academy training. Her precision-based marksmanship methods had been validated by operational success and were now part of the official curriculum that would train the next generation of federal agents. The small-town seamstress who had arrived at the academy with no shooting experience had become a supervisory special agent whose techniques were studied and emulated throughout federal law enforcement. Her journey had proven that excellence could emerge from the most unlikely sources when supported by determination, innovation, and the courage to challenge conventional wisdom. The success that had seemed impossible during those early days of academy training was now her daily reality, a career built on the foundation of precision, analytical thinking, and the absolute refusal to accept limitations imposed by others. Sarah's story had become an inspiration for cadets who faced their own challenges with traditional training methods, proof that unconventional approaches could achieve extraordinary results when applied with skill and determination. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.